Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be across this beautiful blue green globe of ours. Welcome to another edition of Seahawk Boys TV. I'm your host, Mike Barra, Seahawk Boy Mike in Las Vegas, Nevada. Great to be here with you. Well, I thought, after taking some time off, I thought that maybe it would be a good time to come back and talk some Seahawks because we do have some interesting Seahawk news this week. It's the first week of training camp. Everything is going according to plan. No real serious injuries so far. Some guys that were on PUP came off PUP, but there were some shocking and not so shocking developments with the Seattle Seahawks situation this week. And that's what we're going to talk about here in the next couple of minutes. All right, guys, welcome back. It's great to be here with you, and just time for another edition of Seahawk Boys TV. I thought I'd come in and just on a Sunday morning, since this is when we be playing games, thought I'd come in and chat about a few things. Again, I'm Mike Barra. Nice to have you guys here. All right, this week Seahawks training camp kicked off. There were some interesting things that happened in practice. There was a lot of unanimity in the praise for Geno Smith. Everybody's talking about how great Geno Smith looked in camp. And if I go back, let me see, I go back to my profile here. I'll take a look at some of the videos. And the truth is, Geno looked apparently pretty good. People were talking about how he was flinging the ball all over the field. Let me see if I can dig something up here. I should have had something ready. That he was flinging the ball all over the place and looking really sharp and being very accurate, and people were praising him as an elite quarterback. Well, I don't know about that, but I tell you what, let's take a look at some of Geno's highlights from training camp this week and see what we get. See exactly what we get. Okay, there's Geno at training camp, some slow motion stuff, throwing a lot to DK Metcalf, throwing a lot to Jackson Smith and the Jigba. Everybody seems to be happy. Everybody seems to think that he looks really, really good. But one of the things I want you to pay attention to in this is that, this is a great throw and right to the sidelines, very accurate. And the truth is, folks, it's in shorts and shells. Everybody looks good in shorts and shells. Everybody. There's literally no one who doesn't look good in shorts and shells. So that in of itself is nothing particularly spectacular. But, there's a whole different story when you're playing in games with defenses that are scheming against you, taking away your strengths, forcing you to go to your weaknesses, and playing really good teams that are really well coached and have talented football players. That's where Geno has always fallen down. But what has happened is people have been almost with unanimity talking about how much they love Geno Smith, at least in Seahawks Twitter. They're going on and on, Geno's elite, Geno's this, Geno's that. But I thought our friend Rob Staten over on his blog actually had some more interesting things to say about the Seahawks and the quarterback position than most people are actually willing to discuss or willing to put out there. So let's go over and slide and take a look at what Rob has to say and go over a little bit. He talks about in his current piece, defensively, I got what I wanted. They invested money in the defensive line. They spent a first-round pick on Byron Murphy. More on that later. There's quite a bit more to that story. And he talked about issues with the Seahawks. Those who are passionately defensive of Geno Smith are getting quite agitated and uppity about how people describe their man. Yes, there are probably those who are over the top of their negativity of Smith. I don't think they are a serious bunch, though. A handful of people on social media worth ignoring. I don't know if he's referring to me specifically here because I'm not that negative on Geno. I'm just realistic like he is about Geno. However, this group is often portrayed as some kind of rampaging horde. Only this week, a commenter said there is an anti-Geno cult among the fan base during our live stream. Let's be honest, that's bollocks. Without wanting to speak for the majority of the fan base, I think most people have a similar thought as I do. Smith is clearly the man for this year, given his only competition is Sam Howell. When the Seahawks traded for Howell, John Schneider announced he was coming in to be the backup. There's never been any kind of competition. At the same time, it's fair to be unconvinced Smith is a long-term solution. That would be the category I'm in. I think most fans probably believe the Seahawks are going to need to find a main man at some point, probably through the draft. They should have found one already. They've had multiple opportunities to find one. They haven't even taken a chance. They haven't even made a mistake. And again, I'm going to emphasize this again. The time to do it was 2023. They had the 5th and 20th picks in the draft. The first overall pick was for sale by the Chicago Bears. And there was a player, a quarterback, a generational quarterback worth taking with the number 1 pick. His name was CJ Stroud. I identified him as my QB1. Rob Staten, I believe, had him as his QB1. And we certainly could have traded up to get him. Now, Rob has said it's not fair that he responded to me on one of his blogs once saying that there's no guarantee the Seahawks could have made that trade. Yes, there is. It's just a question of will. It's a question of, are you willing to pay the price to go get him? I had somebody else this week argue with me that the price was too high. What's too high? What price is too high to get not only a franchise quarterback, but let's be honest, a generational quarterback, a guy that has turned out to be absolutely fantastic, and probably the future GOAT. I think CJ Stroud is better than Patrick Mahomes. I think he's always going to be better than Patrick Mahomes, and I think he's going to do more with less than Patrick Mahomes has done. People forget with Mahomes, he walked into a Hall of Fame wide receiver, a Hall of Fame tight end, a Hall of Fame head coach, offensive schemer. CJ Stroud's walked into none of those things and had the greatest rookie season of any quarterback in the last, 25 years at least, and probably 50 years, probably since Dan Marino, who also walked into a basically Hall of Fame situation. So this is the guy they should have gone after. And I'm not going to relent on that. I'm going to keep talking about it. But we have to face the reality that this is who we had. This is who we have. This is who we're going with. We're stuck with Geno Smith because of the mistakes made by this administration, this current incarnation of the Seattle Seahawks. But let's get back to what Rob said. It's going to be very difficult to find a replacement. Well, it didn't have to be, but they've made it very difficult. And then he talks about how his fear is that this topic will be what divides fans, the fan base that absolutely loves to split off in different directions, pick teams, and go to battle on the internet. That's interesting stuff. And it is also important to appreciate that I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to back down that the Seahawks can do better than Geno Smith. I'm not going to back down that they should have done better than Geno Smith. And I'm not going to back down on the fact that quarterback should be the number 1 top priority for this team. Now, having said that, they did do a few things this week that were of some interest. They did look at bringing in a former Seahawk, Marquise Blair, a safety who was a second-round pick of the Schneider-Carroll regime and was a complete washout as a Seahawk. Some of it was injuries. Some of it was just that he couldn't play. He stuck around here for a few years, and then they finally let him go. Another burned, blown, high draft pick by the John Carroll, Pete Schneider regime. They brought him back, and the fact that they brought him back indicates that Schneider still wants to be proven right about him, so it's an ego thing. Also, that they think he has some skills that might possibly suit their new defense, and I think it shows that Mike Macdonald believes that there is enough talent there to actually work with. So that's a very interesting move. We'll see if it turns into anything. We will see if he even makes the team. But the other thing, in going back to the quarterback situation, which is actually really important, is the fact that it is being widely reported that Sam Howell has looked absolutely terrible in training camp. Absolutely terrible. That he has been very inaccurate. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, here it is from Hawkmania. Is the Seahawks Sam Howell being a starter hype over? Well, I mean, yeah, I would say yeah, it's over. Um, a fan seriously on Seahawks IG who went to the Seahawks camp told me that Gino is light years ahead of Sam Howell. I don't know if that's good news because if you're not light years ahead of Sam Howell, you're not worth a shit anyway. Greg Belvin said that Sam Howell has been alarmingly inaccurate so far in training camp. Corbin Smith said that he's been struggling. I was told by a Seahawks fan that we need to bring Drew Lock back in response to how poorly Sam Howell has been. And in good news, the wide receiver room has been popping off. Yeah, we do have some good receivers. Michael Sean Duger, one of my least favorite people on the planet next to G. Scott, said, Sam hasn't been good, but in the context of the wide receivers, today showed that if you just put the ball near Bobo, Aesop, Cody White, they'll go get it. Problem with Sam the first few days was he wasn't even doing that. Today is much better in that regard. And my response to this is, who's surprised by this? Out of all the options the Seahawks had for acquiring a replacement for Geno Smith or acquiring a guy who could step in for Geno Smith in a couple years and have more upside potential than Geno does, who, let's face it, Geno struggles in big games against tough teams. Out of all the options they had, Sam Howell was the bottom of the list. I mean, let's look at who they could have brought in. They could have brought back Russell Wilson. They could have traded for Justin Fields. They could have traded for Zach Wilson, who's better, I think, than Sam Howell. At least he has more talent than Sam Howell. They could have drafted any one of the available quarterbacks. They could have paid the price to draft a quarterback and move up. Go get Michael Penix. The trades were there to be made if they were willing to pay the price. They were not willing to pay the price because John Schneider does not value the quarterback position, which shows me, once again, that John Schneider does not know how to win in 2024 NFL. He simply doesn't know how to do it. And on top of that, out of all the moves they could have made and did make, this one was the worst. It was the worst. Trading for Sam Howell was the worst. Let's go back and look at what they actually traded to get Sam Howell. Seattle sent pick number 78 and 152 to the Redskins and got back 102 and 179. Those are worth 230.6 points respectively for a combined 230.6 points. All right. That is the equivalent of, I believe, let's go look at the trade value chart. 236 points right in there. That's the 71st pick overall. 71st pick overall. Now let's take a look at the 71st pick in the 2024 NFL draft. If they had simply kept the pick, kept 78, who could they have gotten? Well, they took Byron Murphy in the first round, which I said at the time I thought was a mistake. I very clearly stated I didn't think he's the next Aaron Donald, the way everybody, including Rob, is making him out to be. I think he's a 3-tech 34 defensive end, which is a low impact player. And I don't think you spend first round picks on low impact players. But let's go back. They then didn't have a second round pick because they traded away for Leonard Williams, another move they should not have made. And if you go back to the 78th pick, let's see, that went to the Houston Texans eventually. So let's look at who the Seahawks could have had. Well, they could have had the guy they took at 81, Christian Haynes. They had 78 and 81. And then they could have taken Zach Zinter. Imagine how optimistic we'd be about the interior of our offensive line if we'd have taken Christian Haynes and Zach Zinter, a right guard and a left guard. And now we're looking at signing, what's his name, Connor Williams, the center from the Cowboys. We could actually have potentially fixed our offensive line. And we still would have had picks left over to select, I don't know, somebody like, I don't know, maybe the guy who went in the 5th round. What's his name? Oh, yeah, Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler, a quarterback, a guy at a position we actually needed. So what I'm saying is we gave up way too much value for Sam Howell, who is shell-shocked, has thrown some of the worst interceptions you will ever see. Just go look at his interceptions. Type Sam Howell interceptions in YouTube, and you will be appalled by some of the decisions this guy makes. So it's not surprising to me at all. So what would I have done? I would have kept the 3rd round pick. I would have kept the 5th round pick. The positions we were at, I would have taken Zach Zinter and Christian, what's his name again? What's our guard's name? Yeah, Christian Haynes. And I would have drafted Spencer Rattler in the 4th round. So what is Spencer Rattler looking like these days? What's he looking like these days? Well, here's a little snippet from Spencer Rattler in Saints training camp. And remember, everybody who's telling you how spectacular Geno Smith is because of how he looks in shorts and shells. Let's take a look at Spencer Rattler. With that rush, go against my body, and throw a strike for a touchdown. Yeah. I don't want this on my team. Nope, not me. Not if I'm the Seahawks. I'd rather have Sam. So the reality is that Spencer Rattler looks really good in Saints training camp. He's going to be a better player than Sam Howell. I think in 3 years, he's going to be a better player than Geno Smith. I think maybe in 2 years, he's going to be a better player than Geno Smith. And he's going to be the Saints quarterback going forward after he sits behind Derek Carr for a year. But we gave up on him. And you know, again, people that are critical of me, people like Rob are critical of me, say, this is my football channel, Seahawk Boys TV. That's all it is. Logical Spark. So people who are critical of me say, well, Spencer Rattler had character concerns. He had character concerns. So the Seahawks passed on him. And lots of other teams passed on him too. So that's justification for the Seahawks passing on him. And I'm like, that's really interesting. Character concerns. Okay. Well, another story came out this week at Seahawks training camp. Byron Murphy has looked, okay. Fell down a few times. But let's go back and take a look now at the other character concerns that are up, that are being basically whitewashed by Seahawks Twitter. It's amazing to me how Seahawks retard Nelson and Dan Veens and Seahawks Forever and Greg Bell, and everybody is avoiding talking about Corbin K. Smith. Everybody's avoiding talking about this, except in the context of, Byron Murphy's the victim of an extortion attempt. No, Byron Murphy apparently engaged the services of a trans prostitute recently with some of the rookie money the Seahawks gave him. And apparently he owes she, him, her, him, she, he, $15,000. As a fan of another team posted, your first round pick is a freak. Yeah, but not in a good way. Head honcho, Miss Mariah Monet, who is a man-woman, said Byron Murphy blocked me off he and his fiance's page because he owes me $15,000. Maybe this will get his attention. He played games and played with the wrong one. At Seahawks, he likes trans, and instead of paying, he wants to go viral. Tag him, his fiance, team, etc. And then she proceeded to post pictures of Byron Murphy II. She has him on her phones. And I'm going to need you to eat that dick from the 20 to the 22nd balls too, says Byron Murphy. Let me know what the flight in my team we gonna be staying at the Hyatt Hotel Lake Washington, so let me know them prices, what day to look for, and one day. So he apparently was buying her services for a full day at $15,000. Yeah. She has messages, evidently, from him. Oh, but it's an extortion attempt. It's an extortion attempt. It's not that Byron Murphy is a scumbag weirdo of extremely low character that the Seahawks wasted. I'm going to say it, wasted the first 16th pick in the first round on. It's not that. It's an extortion attempt. Sure. In other words, he owes her $15,000 for an illegal act of sexual depravity that he doesn't want to pay. Right. But Spencer Rattler, we couldn't draft Spencer Rattler because of character concerns. You seriously can't make this shit up. You seriously cannot make up what an absolute catastrophe the Seattle Seahawks organization is. It's a fucking joke. Now, it's a joke that may go 10-7, depending on if Geno gets injured or not. And barely scratch into the playoffs again, but we just continue to flail around. Since Geno gave Seattle team-friendly discounts of $63 million, the right price moving forward. I kid, of course. Well, it's fascinating, Peter, that you brought that up, because I was going to go there next, because there was a thing that came out this week that I think is probably worth talking about, which is the relative value of contracts in the NFL. And it's very interesting numbers. So here's the list of various contract numbers. And as you can see, Geno Smith is about 20th right in there, right smack in the middle. And I'm sorry, I can't get this any bigger. But these are the lists of the highest paid players in the league. I think Tua just jumped up to near the top of this because of the deal he just signed. But this is where Geno Smith is at. He's making $25 million a year. I think that's fair. I think that's where he is. Geno is among either Geno or Kirk Cousins is the best of the guys who aren't good enough. That's what Geno is. The guys who will never be good enough to carry a team to a Super Bowl. But if you can put a super team around them, like the 2013 Seahawks roster, they might be good enough to win a Super Bowl with. But that almost never happens. In the last 28 years, the winner of the Super Bowl about 88% of the time is a franchise quarterback drafted in the first round, usually in the top 10 or 15 of the first round. There's only a few exceptions. Russell Wilson, who's a Hall of Famer, the Seahawks got lucky with. Nick Foles, even Trent Dilfer was a top 10 pick. So you can't put him in that category. But this crazy notion that you build the roster and then go find an okay quarterback to win a Super Bowl for you, it just doesn't work. The way it works is you go out and get a franchise quarterback. So this brings up an interesting issue, Peter. So I looked at the list of what everybody's making in the NFL this year. And I thought to myself, how many of these guys would I take Geno over? People say Geno deserves to be paid more. Well, then if he deserves to be paid more than the guys who are in front of him, I have to say to myself, I want Geno instead of this guy. So let's go down that list and do a yes, no. Now, I did this with my brother yesterday, and he had 6 guys on this list. 6 guys on this list that he would take Geno over. Joe Burrow, no. Trevor Lawrence, no. Jared Goff, no. And this is not relatively based on their exact skill set today. It's also based on upside potential. So Joe Burrow, no. Trevor Lawrence, no. Just Jared Goff, no. Justin Herbert, no. I wouldn't take Geno over him. Lamar Jackson, are you kidding? Jalen Hurts, no. Kyler Murray, no. This is one people might argue with. Kyler Murray is younger, he's more mobile, and he's shown an affinity, a profinity for making big plays at big times. The Hail Murray is one of them. Deshaun Watson over Geno any day of the week. Much more talented. Kirk Cousins, good question. Kirk Cousins and Geno are about the same in terms of they're among the best of the guys who aren't good enough, who can't seem to win big games. But if you're going to build a really strong roster around him, he might be good enough to win you a Super Bowl. I'm taking Kirk Cousins over Geno just by a little bit because of his arm, his accuracy, his ability to understand defenses and get the ball out. So that's a no. Patrick Mahomes, no. Josh Allen, no. Matthew Stafford, no. Dak Prescott, no. Daniel Jones, yes. Daniel Jones sucks. So I would keep Geno over Daniel Jones. Although, Jones is younger. You might be able to work with him, but no. I think he's established he is what he is, and Geno's just as good, if not better. Aaron Rodgers, no. Derek Carr. Would I rather have Derek Carr or Geno? In this offense, I'd say Geno. So that's 2. Baker Mayfield, no. Jordan Love, no. Gardner Minshew, yes, that's 3. Sam Darnold, yes, that's 4. Caleb Williams, no. Bryce Young, no. Jaden Daniels, no. Drake May, no. CJ Stroud, fuck no. Zach Wilson, yes. So what do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. Out of these 25 or 30 players, there's only 5 of them I would prefer Geno Smith to. And quite frankly, Geno Smith and Derek Carr is 50-50 for me. I wouldn't be upset if we had Derek Carr, although I wouldn't want to pay him more than we're paying Geno. Gardner Minshew, love to have him as a second quarterback. Zach Wilson, I would prefer to Sam Darnold, or not Sam Darnold, but Sam Howell. I'll tell you that. Why? Because they're basically the same player. They're both shell-shocked, but he has more physical talent than Sam Howell. That's why he went number 2 overall, and Sam Howell went sometime in the 5th round. So those are the developments in Seahawks training camp this week. They're interesting. They're not very good, but what I want to know is when, if ever, is anybody on the Seahawks beat going to ask John Schneider or Mike McDonald about character? Not directly, but indirectly, the Seahawks cited character as the reason why they couldn't take Spencer Rattler, who looks to be balling out in New Orleans Saints training camp and is their quarterback in the future. Would have solved the Seahawks quarterback problem, as I said, leading up to and during the draft and after the draft. But hey, John Schneider's smarter than me, smarter than you. He's smarter than Rob Staten. No, he's not. He's a dumb fuck. And then you have this guy that you drafted, you spent first-round money on and a first-round pick on, who apparently is a deviant with serious problems. He better be good on the field, because if he isn't, this is going to be another major bust in the first round by the Seahawks. We'll see. But the question should be raised. You spent a first-round pick on a guy who pays $15,000 for illegal activities with trannies. But you refused, despite 5 or 6 opportunities, to draft a quarterback of the future because you said he had character issues. And apparently you thought you had the problem solved with Sam Howell, which you clearly don't. What are you going to do? How do you answer that, John? Let's do it like a presidential debate. Exactly how do you answer that, John? I'd love to see somebody ask that question. Nobody but me has the balls to do it because they're all afraid to lose their credentials. And I'd love to see if Rob Staten, who's one of the few guys out there with some gonads, will actually address this question, because it is a relevant question. If character is so important to you and you're so good at what you do, how did this guy and his low character slip through your screening process? That's a legitimate, fair question. Because now we're stuck with the salary cap issues. All right, so let's go back one more time and talk about the future. before we get out of here, let's talk about the future. We got more training camp to come. It's hopefully going to be fun. I mean, every day I only care about one thing. Besides those Guardian helmet things, by the way, they're gay. Jesus, letting guys wear those on the field is going to be the gayest thing ever. Just ridiculous. Just so stupid. Let's go back over the salary cap. So what would I do if I was the Seahawks? Well, I would tear it down to the studs. I would say, look, Mike McDonald, we're glad you're here. We think our team's going to play smarter and with more discipline than they ever did under Pete Carroll. And we're glad you're here, and we like you, and we want you to stay. But we're going to tear this thing down to the studs and go get a quarterback. Right now, for 2025, and I think they cleared this cap space to go get that center. What's this? Connor Williams? I forget his name. Former Dallas center, but he's probably better than what we have. What am I going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is admit that I'm not going to the Super Bowl this year. I'm not. Not with Geno Smith and Sam Howell at quarterback. Not with still some serious question marks on the offensive line. Now I have an overabundance of talent at the skill positions. I have DK Metcalf. I have Jackson Smith-Njigba. I have Tyler Lockett. I have Noah Fant. I have Zach Charbonnet. And I have Kenneth Walker. And I have a first-round top 10 left tackle. I have Abe Lucas, hopefully when he gets healthy at right tackle. Behind him, I have George Fant. I should be able to score a lot of points this year. But let's face it, we're not going to the Super Bowl. And when I say a contender, that's what I mean. I don't mean a contender for a playoff spot or squeaking through in the division. I mean a contender for the Super Bowl, and we're not. And it's foolish to continue to delude ourselves into thinking that we are. So what I would do if I was the owner of this team would be I would direct the general manager to shed the salary cap, get rid of the players that are 30 or approaching 30, spend that money on younger players, and go get a superstar quarterback, a guy that we think can win it all for us. A Russell Wilson guy. So how do you do that? Well, the most obvious choice is DK Metcalf. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He's our best player. We're not going to win the Super Bowl anyway. The Steelers and Russ would love to have him. The Chiefs might like having him. Certainly the Bills. There's a lot of teams out there that would probably pay a first-round pick for him. But the wide receiver market is softened. So let's say the only offer we get is a second and a fifth, or a second and 2 fifths. Okay. Because if we trade him right now we are $20 million over the salary cap for 2025. And we are deluding ourselves as an organization. The Seahawks are deluding themselves if they think they're going to be any more serious a Super Bowl contender in 2025 than they are in 2024. If Jackson Smith-Njigba is as good as Tyler Lockett, we're not any better. So if we trade DK, let's say for just a second and a fifth, we save not only $17 million on the cap this year, but we save $22 million on the cap next year. So we jump with that one move from $20 million over the cap to $1.6 million under the cap. Then next year we say, look, we got Sam Howell. We're going to go get another quarterback. We're going to cut you in 2025, Geno. We're going to save $25 million under the cap. Now we're at $26.5 million in cap space. Tyler Lockett, it's been great. A $31 million cap hit is way too high. We're going to cut you and save the $17 million. If you'd like to come back for $5 million, we'll have you back. Draymond Jones, average player, average starter. Hoping he can do something more under Mike McDonald than he did under Pete Carroll, but $11.572 million, not worth it. By Leonard Williams, 31 years old, average player. By now it gets tough. Uchenna Nwosu, looking great in training camp. Maybe the comeback player of the year. Although I think if they still did the award the way they used to, it'll be Russell Wilson, but we'll see. But an $8.481 million cap savings. You can get 2 starters for $8.4 million. 2 starters somewhere on a defense. Sorry, you're going to be 30 next year, 29. You've had a catastrophic knee injury. No matter how well you play, I'm going to trade you or cut you. Noah Fant, good player, $9 million cap savings. Bye-bye. And Jason Myers, go find another kicker. Save the $2.7 million. So at that point, we have $88 million in cap space. That would probably be the most in the NFL. So we use that cap space and the draft picks. Where would we be with the draft picks? Where would we be with the draft picks is a good question. We'd have a 2025 first round pick. We'd have 2 second round picks. We'd have a 3rd round pick. We'd have 2 fourths and 2 fifths. So we're the first, 2 seconds, a 3rd, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and $88 million in cap space. I can rebuild this roster. First thing I'm going to do is go find a quarterback. And if that means the Cowboys don't want Dak and they put him on the open market, okay, I'll take Dak. Because Dak's only about 30 now, 32, whatever he is. I'll take Dak, and I'll build using the rest of my cap space around him. Or I will draft a guy. I'll find the best guy in the draft. I'll trade up for him. Yeah, Dak's going to be 32 in 2025. Still 5-6 years left. 4, 5, 6 years left. That's what I'm doing. But I have balls. Seahawks don't. And the Seahawks are delusional enough to think that they are contenders. All right, that was week 1. It was an eventful week. I will be interested. I'll be very interested to see if anybody asks about this Byron Murphy thing, because it is a serious character issue that needs to be addressed by the team. All right, that's what I got. I hate to be so relentlessly negative, but I'm just begging the Seahawks to give me a reason to be optimistic that we're going to be more than 10-7. So far, I'm not seeing it. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. Probably be back next week for a week 2 training camp roundup. I don't see how it could be more interesting than Geno looks great. Sam Howell, the guy we spent a 3rd round pick on, looks terrible. And Byron Murphy likes trans. Owes $15,000 to a trans prostitute. I don't see how it could be more interesting than that. Oh, and Spencer Rattler looks every bit as good as Mike Barrett thought he would. See you next week. Let's hope the news gets better. Bye-bye.